Ubisoft gave me early access to Assassin's Creed Mirage, and so far I've got about 10 hours played. So I'm gonna let you guys know what I think so far about detection, parkour, combat, the world, and also a bit of the story, but rest assured this is a no spoilers video. Ubi gave me a list of things to avoid, so I decided let's just avoid all of it. You won't be spoiled by this video, and if you want to jump around, I've left timestamps in the description below. Let's start this with a disclaimer. There's two things in particular being said about Mirage that I just don't think are true and you should know before you play. First off, did they bring back Unity parkour? The answer is definitively no, absolutely not. This was taken from an interview given last year about their inspirations for the parkour for Mirage. It was said that they are inspired by Unity and they're going to try to get it close to Unity. I don't want you to buy this game expecting Unity parkour because that's just not true. This is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but with improvements, and I think it does feel pretty good. We'll get to that later, but that is just like a huge misconception. Don't go into this game believing that. Number two disclaimer, that this is just Assassin's Creed Valhalla and it looks the same. On the surface, this is absolutely true. A lot of the UI elements, even some of the animations are exactly the same from Valhalla, because as we know, this began as a Valhalla DLC. But don't make the mistake of buying this game thinking you're getting Valhalla, because as someone who really didn't like Valhalla in the end, I don't think this feels like Valhalla. It's very refreshing. It feels like they did their best to make an old school feeling game within the Valhalla engine, within the current version of Assassin's Creed. And with what I've played so far, I think they really nailed it with their goal, with their mission of let's make something that is nostalgic and something that leans into the assassin fantasy, that shows people that may have only played the last 3 games that yes, indeed, it is fun to play as an assassin that wants to use the hidden blade, that wants to wear the hood, that wants to be part of the Brotherhood, because that's what you get here. Parkour, from what I've seen, is easily the most discussed topic when it comes to Mirage. If it looks good, if it looks bad, if it looks like Valhalla. Like I said, it's hard to just watch gameplay and not say, oh, this is just Valhalla, because of same animations, the way that Basim really sort of like gains momentum when you start sprinting and he shifts side to side. It's very Eivor. The two biggest differences between Mirage and Valhalla on parkour are this. Number one is the world design, because this game is a city game. A city game means there's tons of buildings, lots of way to traverse between one to another. I'm pretty sure you could cross the entirety of Baghdad via building if you wanted to, along the rooftops. So what you're seeing, what you're doing, what you're engaging with moment to moment is completely different from Valhalla. Valhalla was a game where you hopped on a horse and went from point A to point B, and then maybe there was a building you could climb and incorporate that into gameplay, but once again, you were a Viking. In this game, you're an assassin. And that's reflected with the design of this city. So it feels completely different moment to moment when you're climbing things, running, jumping, doing all of that stuff. Number two, Basim is faster. Basim is very smooth, very quick. He's not wasting, any movement. There are some new animations, such as the way Basim jumps over stuff. It's very slick, stylish, cool. It reminds you of an assassin immediately when you see it. Generally, I think parkour feels pretty good, but it takes like a couple hours to get used to how the system works. And I remember having the same problem when I played early in Bordeaux, and also when I played Valhalla, and I think it's a control scheme issue. When you're free running, you've got 2 modes of running. You've got just a normal run, and you've got a sprint run. Now, as you're shambling over things and parkouring, the game seems to randomly decide when to stop sprinting and when to start sprinting again. And the reason that's so frustrating is because it dictates how far you jump and also your different little hops and movements. And yeah, it took me a long time to sort of figure that out. I can say towards the end of what I've been playing so far, I did figure it out and I felt a lot more confident with parkour, with my movements, and what I wanted to do more closely matched what was happening on screen. But still, you have those weird magnetic moments where you're jumping between certain things and Basim sort of like, accelerates, decelerates, accelerates, decelerates, and it looks a little unnatural. So Depending on your preferences, you're going to find that a little irritating or it's not going to bother you. As long as you go in knowing that this is an improved version of Valhalla, but not a completely different, quote unquote, fixed version of the parkour, then I think you're going to enjoy this, especially if you're an old school fan that wants to run and jump across rooftops and dive into hay bales as much as possible. You're doing that constantly in this game. It's really refreshing as an old school fan. We need to talk about stealth, guys. I am quite simply blown away by how good the detection and stealth systems are in Mirage. It is shocking. Like, it is insane going from Valhalla's broken, inconsistent system to Mirage, which works perfectly, predictably. I know when I'm gonna get seen. I take chances every now and then. Sometimes I get seen, but sometimes I don't. But it feels good. Like, it feels like they finally got this right, and it's making me smile right now. I've got so many examples that I can show you guys of me infiltrating areas and getting seen, but not alerting the entire camp. Just a one-on-one thing. Maybe another guard sees us and I'm able to get rid of both of them, hide their bodies, and then reinitiate stealth. I wrote in my notes that this is the kind of gameplay that engages the brain more. So if you can think of Valhalla's gameplay, which again, I'm not a fan of, as sort of a soft brain experience, then this is like a galaxy brain experience where there's some real cause and effect here. You are moving chess pieces on a board. Every single camp you enter feels like a puzzle. Seeing the vision cones in Eagle Vision is so helpful, and again, like I said, it makes sense. The vision cones, actually, if you're seen within them, you get seen. If you're not seen within them, then you're not seen. I also wrote in my notes that stealth is very forgiving, and I think that's really important because that lets you experiment and explore and see what you can get away with. Compared to my preview, I actually used tools in the first 10 hours of the game. I unlocked the blow dart and the smoke bomb and used both of those a ton. Pretty quickly, I realized I could blow dart one guy, put him to sleep, take out his friend, and then take out the sleep guy. And that is pretty much the easiest, stealthiest way to take out a group of 2 guards. Smoke is an incredibly useful tool. You can use it to take out entire groups of guards, or as a getaway if you want to re-engage stealth after being seen. Speaking of, that's a core part of what you're supposed to be doing in Mirage, and I feel like people forget that because of the broken detection systems in previous games. Using the last known position, people can see you, and then you can escape, and then you can re-engage in stealth and find a better way to attack. Like what I just described, that works. You can utilize that in every single scenario, and it feels great. Another thing that felt really good in stealth is using throwing knives. I was able to take out a group of 3 guards using throwing knives only. I was seen, I knew I had to do something quickly, so I headshotted all 3 of them, and nobody was wiser after that. So it's a rewarding stealth experience, I would say, in Mirage, much more than you've felt in a while. Another thing this game does that Valhalla certainly did not is create stealth-specific scenarios for you that were in, I feel like, the Ezio games. Look at this very small, tiny corridor here. It is absolutely within your ability to get from one end of this hall to the other without being seen by a single soul. And it's very tight and cramped. It reminds me of the tombs in the Ezio games. This stuff wouldn't work, really, if detection didn't work. But again, in my 10 hours played, detection is really strong and solid and reliable. Now let's shift over to combat. Now, another thing that I really disagree with, and it should have been a disclaimer at the beginning of the video, is that they nerfed combat in this game to buff stealth. Like, why do they need to nerf combat? Combat was not nerfed in the original game. It's true that you can only use the sword and dagger, but guys, that's the only part of combat that actually does feel nerfed, because you can absolutely carve through people in this game with combat if that's how you want to play. The trade-off here is that Basim gets hit pretty hard on normal difficulty, so you're not going to be able to take a ton of damage. You just need to be better about dodging and parrying, but the parry to instant kill is so satisfying. It's not quite like the old games, but it at least reminds me of them, and it also shows me that combat doesn't need to be this extended long dance between Basim and an enemy like it was with Eivor with enemies in Valhalla. In general, fights in Mirage are much quicker. You gotta learn when to dodge the red attacks and when to parry the white ones. I say combat's quicker, but there are some scenarios that are tough. When you're facing an armored enemy, it took me a while to learn how to get behind them and properly deal damage without getting completely destroyed. Tools have very specific functions in combat that feel satisfying. Like the smoke bomb, like I said before, completely OP. You throw that down and you're able to take down people very quickly. Throwing knives can be used against these armored guys in between their armor cracks or at their legs to sort of stun them, and then you can get behind them and get some good damage in. If you want a really tough fight, take on one of the elite Shakaria, which you get by having max notoriety. They'll hunt you down, similar to the guys hunting you down in Revelations. Again, you can abuse tools and feel really powerful to just take these guys out pretty easily. But if you're finding tools to be too easy in combat, like a cheat code, you don't have to use them. But when I think back to old school Assassin's Creed, that is how it felt. It felt like you were just carving through enemies, especially Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. That game was a power fantasy, and this one definitely can feel like one if you lean into those tools for combat. Let's talk about this world. We already kind of touched on how the city is designed for parkour, but outside of that, like, how does it feel to be in Baghdad? What are the crowds like? What is the escape loop like, where you could, in the original games, get seen, escape through a crowd, and then disappear? First of all, I feel like it's redundant at this point to say that Ubisoft games, their environments look pretty. They've got that pretty much nailed at this point. However, Baghdad is so pretty. I mean, I'm definitely benefiting from playing this at 4K max settings on my 4090, so that's clearly a part of this, but my God, Baghdad is beautiful. If you loved the vibes in Origins, the mysteriousness of that environment, the sand dunes, all of that, it feels like it's that, but like ratcheted up. You know, this feels like the final form of, you know, this current version of Assassin's Creed in terms of visual fidelity. We didn't get to see too much of how this system could look in big cities because, again, Valhalla was very sparse on cities. Baghdad is this huge city with multiple districts that all have their own different flavor going on in terms of visual design and different sensibilities with the people and the guards. It's just a stunning game to be in. And I can see it occupying a similar territory. Not saying it is Unity level, because Unity I still think is just absolutely gorgeous. But I think this game could contend in terms of the vibes department, where you are just skulking the rooftops and you got your hood on. Just, it's very vibey. And I think that's gonna feel very nice for old school fans like me. Shifting over to the escape loop. Now, this is something that I'm not super impressed with so far. I don't think it really captures the elements that you found in the Ezio games or the first Assassin's Creed. For example, when you get seen and you engage in a really cool chase scene and the soundtrack starts bumping and you're just like, yes, this is amazing. It is way too easy to escape in this game. And I found myself just running a couple buildings over and the guards would pretty much just give up. Now, I do think maybe two things are going on. Number one, this is just how the game is. Number two, it could be that I'm not in very hard districts yet, and so therefore they don't really set up like roadblocks, you know, of those guys kind of like guarding and daring you to run past them. You know, I've gotten in situations where I am completely surrounded, but I can throw a smoke bomb and just get the heck out of there and escape very easily. There's also just not enough crowds in this game to facilitate the social blending loop where you escape as a blade into the crowd and they can't find you. I've had some really cool scenarios where I'm on a black box mission, for example, and I'm able to use the crowd to navigate through different parts, and that is fantastic. Like, that is an experience I've been missing so much, and I'm very glad it's possible in Mirage, but it doesn't really factor into the open world gameplay loop where you're escaping. Again, could be that I'm in earlier game districts, so there's not a ton of people. Maybe there will be more populated areas in the game later on. I just haven't found that to be something that I'm actively doing yet. Something that I'm really enjoying, though, is the notoriety system. It's so nice to see this back. It's got 3 tiers. The first one is, I think guards are just more vigilant, and they'll kind of comment on you if they see you around, and they'll even investigate and follow you around, which is so interesting. The second level actually spawns archers. Archers will be on rooftops that they were not on before if you're at notoriety level 2. It adds another element of navigating this city, another challenge. That's fantastic. It works really well. And then I already showed you guys level 3 with the elite, chasing you around, trying to kill you. Overall, super pleased that that stuff is back. I'm sorry I'm overusing this word, but vibes. One of the vibiest things I've felt in Mirage so far is walking around and pickpocketing people. Now, it does use this silly little mini game that was for, instant assassinations in Valhalla. I honestly don't mind because it's so quick, but you can walk around and pickpocket absolutely everyone. However, the coolest thing is that this person that you pickpocket will complain. They'll say, "Guard, come over here. Someone stole something from me." And then I'll just be skulking in the shadows nearby. And then that guard will start investigating. He'll start looking around for the culprit. It seems like such a minor thing, but it's a detail that really brought me into the world. And it also makes sense for Basim as a person. His background is in being a thief. He is a thief before he becomes an assassin. So it has that narrative context that really felt appropriate for me. You might as well call this Thief Simulator 2023 because I am stealing everything off of everyone. There's a lot more I want to talk about, but I'll save that for like a final review once I'm done with the game.
Basim ibn Ishaq, you now follow in the Eagle's path.
Finally, let's talk about the story, but again, no spoilers. This is very generally speaking. How do I feel about Basim? How do I feel about his pursuit? So on and so forth. I'm still very much in the honeymoon phase of my experience with this game, but right now, I really like it. I think Basim is one of the better protagonists we've had in a while, since Bayek, actually. I really connect with him. He's pretty serious. Sometimes the voice actor can feel like he's performing like stage lines, like in a play. So sometimes he doesn't really work for me. Other times I'm like, yes, Basim, go off, King. You are literally so cool. I love you as an assassin. I think that's the difference there is before he becomes an assassin, he's a little annoying to me. Once he discovers more about himself and his purpose and, the stakes that are at play with the Order of the Ancients, that's when I really start connecting with him. I just prefer an edgelord protagonist. That's always been my case, and I get those vibes from Basim. I'm so pleased with how much this game leans into assassinations, investigating targets, and being in the Brotherhood. Those are like the 3 pillars of the story. You've also got Basim's personal struggle, which I won't talk about, but this game focuses on the stuff that I care about in a way that you have sincerely not seen since Origins. Valhalla, Odyssey, they do things differently, and you could definitely make cases for that. Mirage focuses on what I care about, and I'm very pleased with it. Almost everything you're doing in the story is in service of the Brotherhood, in service of chasing a target. It's just like music to my ears, and if that's what you're looking for, I think you'll be really happy. A few tiny criticisms before we get into the conclusion. I think that Ubisoft, I'm pretty sure they're making massive improvements to animation for future games. You're still seeing some goofy stuff with the animation, especially character models. I just don't think they're quite at the level they need to be in 2023. This is a budget game. It's $50 US, so I guess you could make a concession for that. But yeah, some of these character models, they don't look great. The eyes are like watery. They look like glass sometimes. You'll see a lot of like cloth physics poking through. They didn't really nail the cloth physics in this game, so that might be disappointing for some of you. Just a few things I noticed while I was playing the story. All right, what do I think generally about this game after 10 hours? I think if you wanted a stealth-first experience from Assassin's Creed, you've got it. It works really well in this game. If you wanted a character that wants to be an assassin and is a major part of the Brotherhood and is chasing down targets and taking them out, you've got it. If you wanted a city game that's fun to navigate around, that has a ton of rooftops and a lot of opportunities to pull off shenanigans and pickpockets and truly feel immersed in the game, I think you've got it too. If you wanted a massive game that has over 100 hours of potential playtime and a lot of different choices in dialogue and a lot of loot to go and get, I don't think Mirage is the game for you because it's definitely more reserved in that way. It is back to the roots, old school. It's not about looting, it's about doing. With Starfield and Baldur's Gate 3 and I don't know however many other massive games that have come out this year that people are loving or not loving, this is a breath of fresh air game for me. I'm really pleased that I'm probably halfway through the game so far. Like, that feels great. Genuinely, I think this game proves that the core mechanics of a game like Valhalla are not necessarily flawed. It's how much you're encountering and doing them and how repetitive it feels. Mirage, like getting into buildings to open chests, there's a lot of the same stuff going on, like break the lock or move the boulder, or break open the door, whatever. That happens in Mirage, but you're not doing it about 20 million times, so it doesn't feel like you're grinding, you know, in Mirage at all. It feels refreshing in its scope and its approach. It feels old school. And as a, you know, an old school fan, it's making me pretty happy so far, I will say. So yeah, guys, that is all from me on Mirage. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. Thanks to Yubi for sending me a code and letting me play this early and share my thoughts with you guys. I may stream this game and talk a little bit more about it, so if that's something you're into, keep your eyes on the channel. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and hit the bell so you receive notifications next time I upload. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.